December 7th, 1941. The turmoil of World War II enters its 27th month. Japanese troops storm Shanghai. German armies stand at the gates of Moscow, leaving 6.5 million casualties in their wake. Nazi Germany has mainland Europe in its grip. Under siege, Britain hangs on by a thread. 3,000 miles away, the United States remains at peace. 76% of her citizens support neutrality. At 7:55 a.m., the peace is shattered. 360 Japanese warplanes descend on Pearl Harbor. World War II has come to America. This is America's war as never seen before. From the unique vantage point of space. Witness the key battles unfold and the military strategies behind them in stunning detail. Revealed are the political alliances, the global battle for resources, and the astounding awakening of American military and manufacturing might that will determine the outcome of the greatest conflict ever fought. The unprovoked Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor will send shockwaves across the globe, but America has feared a strike for months. Since 1931, Japan's imperial ambitions have grown bolder and bolder. First, Manchuria is invaded, then China itself. When France falls to Nazi Germany in 1940, Japan seizes control of French Indochina. The U.S. response is rapid. Japan's financial assets are frozen and an oil embargo is imposed. The message is clear: withdraw from Indochina or be economically crushed.
After the embargo, Japan was faced with two choices: stop territorial expansion, give in to the demands of the Allies, or go to war.
Japan chooses war. In the words of Prime Minister Tojo, it is either glory or decline. It is imperative that they make the first decisive strike.
The Japanese knew they were never going to go toe-to-toe with the United States in a long naval war in the Pacific. They knew they didn't have the economic might, the military might, but it was a calculation that they could administer a knockout blow to the capital ships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet.
If you could destroy the Pacific Fleet, the ability of the Americans to respond to anything for many months would be taken away. So the strike at Pearl Harbor was not just a strike at a symbol of American power, it was American power in the Pacific.
What American intelligence cannot see is revealed from space. Admiral Yamamoto's fleet departs Japan on the longest assault in history. Avoiding shipping lanes and landmass, they arrive unseen 275 miles from their target. It's the perfect vantage point, beyond the range of America's defensive radar, but at the optimum strike distance for its force of 414 cutting-edge aircraft. The jewel in the crown, the Mitsubishi Zero.
It's faster than anything that they've used before. It's incredibly maneuverable and it has extreme range. But while the technology was pretty good, what mattered at Pearl Harbor was the man behind it. It was the pilot. The Japanese pilots have already been at war for years, so they're well-trained crews. You add on top of that, they'd been planning that attack for a long period of time, so they've been running war games, simulating it, going through the action again and again, so that basically many of them talked about how they could have done it going in blind.
At 7:55 a.m., the first wave of bombers swooped from the sky. On the deck of the USS Arizona is Don Stratton.
We knew right away that they were Japanese planes, and We knew that they were bombing Fort Island and something was radically wrong. Planes were strafing and dive bombing. It was just a horrible experience and a horrible sight. It was a high-altitude bomber, dropped like a 2,000-pound bomb. I mean, it just devastated everything in its path, and the concussion and the smoke and the fire was horrendous. It just was like you'd lost your home.
Of 8 battleships at anchor, the Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and California are sunk. The rest severely damaged. In 68 minutes, Japan has crippled the heart of America's Pacific Fleet.
From the Japanese perspective, the attack on Pearl Harbor succeeded beyond the most optimistic expectations. When you consider the losses that the Japanese suffered in this attack, it was essentially nothing.
The Japanese lose 64 men to 3,649 U.S. casualties, a human damage ratio of 57-1. But Japan's margin of victory hides 2 major flaws in the attack.
The Japanese failed to systematically attack the oil fields, the oil storage tanks at Pearl Harbor. If they'd have spent one more sortie taking out those oil tanks, they would have crippled the whole Pacific Fleet, which wouldn't have had the fuel supplies to keep going.
More significant are the ships the Japanese failed to target.
The American aircraft carriers were absent from Pearl Harbor at the time of the Japanese attack. And as things evolved very quickly, it became clear that the aircraft carrier is destined to become the most significant naval asset for either side in the Pacific War, and the American carriers were untouched.
Oil supplies and air domination, 2 factors that will dictate the fate of World War II, and Japan fails to damage either. Instead, it has awoken the full wrath of the sleeping American giant.
Pearl Harbor infuriated the American people. It also infuriated the American military. Massive casualties, destruction of most of the Pacific Fleet. If you wanted to do one thing to unite a country that before this had been rather divided about what to do about the war, Pearl Harbor was it.
This was like a lightning rod throughout the American population. No longer was President Roosevelt limited in his options. He had a United States population that was angry and unified and desired revenge against Japan.
Her era of isolationism is over. America is at war and begins its rise to become the most powerful nation on the planet. Washington calculates victory will cost $300 billion, $4.4 trillion in today's money, over 1.5 times the total U.S. federal budget. The government can raise half through increased taxes. For the rest, it must turn to the public.
To raise $300 billion was then viewed as an insurmountable challenge because basically we had to get half the population of the United States to buy bonds. And what we were saying is, we're in World War II, we're in this to win, it's a fight of good versus evil, and you, on an individual level, are going to make a difference.
To guarantee success, the ad men of New York recruit America's most potent propaganda asset.
We had the Hollywood machine. America had mass-marketed movies. They knew the power of Hollywood. They knew the power of celebrities.
Over 300 movie icons joined the Stars Over America campaign, crisscrossing the nation. Chicago, 2 huge celebrity rallies sell over $15 million in bonds. New York, a 3-way baseball game generates $56 million. By the end of the war, bonds campaigns raise $187.5 billion.
To get everybody aligned behind one goal and make the transaction is huge.
America and its beleaguered allies are going to need every cent. 4 days after Pearl Harbor, Nazi Germany declares war on the United States. She now faces two vast and battle-hardened powers on two fronts.
When America entered the war, it looked as if the military aggressors were going to win.
Seen from space, America's peril is clear. Her fleet is in disarray, and her Pacific assets at the mercy of a rampant Japan. On the other side of the planet, her strongest military ally, Great Britain, is buckling under siege from Nazi Germany. America is at the epicenter of the greatest conflict in history. Roosevelt must make the biggest call of any U.S. presidency. Which enemy to engage first?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt decided that Germany was the one that could take down our closest friends around the world, and they had to make sure that Britain survived.
Keeping Britain afloat was essential to the long-term prospects of victory. It stood as a large aircraft carrier that would enable an invasion onto the continent. If Britain fell under Nazi domination, the challenge would be almost insurmountable.
For Roosevelt, the future of Great Britain is the future of the war. But after 17 months of fighting alone, its survival rests on a knife edge.